President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
In a recent press conference, President Trump was asked how he could be so certain that the mid-air collision between a military helicopter and a commercial flight that killed 67 people in the skies over D.C. was caused by DEI hiring processes from the previous administration, stated earlier in an executive order he signed. He answered by saying that he has common sense, a laughable assertion by the 78-year-old elderly man, given his abundance of moments captured on video of his deteriorating dementia. But that's not the angle I want to take here. This needless accident is a referendum not only on Trump's and the far-right's prioritization of the ideologically driven motivation to gut the federal government over safety, but also the danger their arrogant incompetence brings to all of us. But before we dive in, if you enjoy this video and want to support the channel, don't forget to click the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Your support means a lot, and it also helps promote these progressive messages to the YouTube algorithm, which helps its amplification to reach even more people. I first want to start with a clip of the renowned best-selling author Robert Greene, who has written books such as Mastery, The 48 Laws of Power, and The Art of Seduction, which I highly recommend reading. He was on an episode of Chris Williamson's podcast a few months ago where he discussed his concept of how more harm is caused by stupid and incompetent people than by evil people. I want to use Greene's response to frame what has happened with the recent mid-air collision over DC to show how the stupidity, arrogance, and false confidence portrayed in Trump's and the right's response to their own gutting of resources for the FAA and the federal government more broadly directly causes more of these tragedies. Their stupidity and incompetence harms Americans.
The stupidest people are always the ones who think they have the right answers. So more harm is caused in this world by stupid, incompetent people than by evil people. What makes people stupid, and right now we have a lot of stupid people in this world. There always have been stupid people, but because there are more people on the planet, exponentially there are more stupid people on the planet, is their certainty that they have all the answers. And when you have leaders, this is to get back to the Greek thing, when you have leaders who are so certain, they enter a country into a war that they haven't been fought out of, and so the paradigm in ancient culture was the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, the war that ended up kind of being the end of Athenian democracy and of their golden era. Thucydides, one of the greatest writers who ever lived, wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War, living at that time. He was saying that the leaders thought, oh, this will be so easy, and think of all the great things when we go and we take Sicily and we conquer that, the whole world the Sparta will be destroyed, right? It wasn't thought through. They were so certain of the answer that they didn't think of the parameters, right? They didn't think really on a grand strategic level. So people who are certain of things are very stupid. And when they have power, they're very, very dangerous. I'm not saying evil people aren't dangerous, but incompetent, stupid people who are so certain who haven't thought things through are just as dangerous as evil people. I think there's far more stupid people than there are evil people as well.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Trump, MAGA, and the corporate-controlled government, which prevents the proper funding of agencies responsible for ensuring the safety of Americans, use their stupidity, incompetence, and arrogant certainty to harm innocent citizens. It is widely known that Trump and his far-right MAGA corporate-controlled drones campaigned on gutting the federal government. Trump's executive actions have proved that to be true, with his memorandum targeting 2 million federal employees for deferred resignation, gutting a key aviation safety advisory committee, and the firing of the heads of the TSA and Coast Guard, among many others. Yet when asked by the reporter how he could be so certain that the cause of the crash was the Obama and Biden administration's DEI policies, Trump responds with arrogant stupidity that his certainty comes from his common sense. Clearly, we hopefully all now see what the common sense of profit-driven corporate misers bring to the world. If you recall the Boeing 737 MAX crashes from 2018 to 2019, which killed 346 people due to ineffective FAA oversight that failed to ground the faulty aircraft, or the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, which forced residents to evacuate after the release of hazardous materials caused by the lack of modern brake safety regulations and Norfolk Southern's decision to prioritize stock buybacks over essential maintenance, these tragedies underscore a defining trait of corporate-driven management, cutting corners to maximize profits while others bear the consequences. It is a common pattern throughout history that when the profit-driven, corporate capitalist sphere of America lead the government or their companies in periods of economic stagnation, safety regulations and maintenance are cut to improve the bottom line, which endanger all of us. This needless and avoidable tragedy in the sky above DC is no different. The incompetence and mismanagement by the Trump administration, but more importantly, the zealotry Republicans have had in Congress to cut government spending, are to blame for this failure. Because of the right's obsessively corporate-driven mandate to cut government spending above all else so that they can provide tax cuts to the opulently rich class of society without increasing the government deficit, directly increases the risk that these accidents happen. It was reported by the New York Times that one air traffic controller was communicating with both helicopters and planes, and that those jobs are typically assigned to 2 people, not 1, a clear consequence of budgetary constraints on the FAA caused by the obstruction of Republicans in Congress. This dangerous incompetence caused by the almost religious zealotry the corporate-controlled MAGA Republicans have to cut government spending is further compounded by Trump's malevolent statements that DEI from the previous administration is responsible, which subverts the truth of the blood on their hands from gutting the FAA in order to further attack their political opposition through falsehood and outright lies. Their parsimony, their extreme unwillingness to fund the necessary resources for the safety of Americans, means the blood of the victims of this crash is on their hands. It is up to us to hold them accountable and to fight for a government that is not controlled by corporate misers who willingly trade the deaths of Americans to improve their bottom line when counting their beans, like all the corporate oppressors of America throughout its history. The political pendulum always swings between the right and the left, between cost-cutting austerity and increasing government spending. So far, the Trump administration is mirroring the Hoover administration that exacerbated the Great Depression with austerity and tariff policies. The far-left Democrat who followed the Hoover presidency and led the country through the worst of the Great Depression, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, implemented his New Deal for Americans to fight back against this corporate greed-driven tyranny. During the Hoover administration's tenure, wherein people were hurt, especially farmers, by the tariffs of Hoover, FDR instructed Democrats to remain patient and to be sanely radical enough for when the political pendulum swings back into their favor. So in this period of repeated history when the Trump, or what should be called the neo-Hoover administration, implements tariffs and cost-cutting measures that end up hurting ordinary Americans and especially farmers, we must remember to be patient, to stay focused, to stay vigilant, and to be sanely radical enough, fellow freedom fighters.